used to work in the shop, and I remember there was a gentleman used to come into the shop. He had been a casualty of the Second World War. He had been a pilot, and his entire head and face had basically been melted. And he would come in the shop, and he had this sort of yellowy orange sort of skin texture. He had sort of a hole in his face where his nose had been. I think he had one slit where his eye had been, and a little hole where he could feed himself. And he would come in the shop, and his hands were terribly burnt. His face and his head were terribly burnt. And he would try and communicate what he wanted to buy. But until you actually got used to him, it was very difficult to comprehend what he wanted. And he would point to the potatoes, or he would point to the cabbages or the carrots. And then you had to determine what quantity he wanted, you know. So I'd just start putting the potatoes in the metal scoop. And when he thought there was enough, he'd hold his hand up. And then they would be tipped into his shopping bag. And then perhaps he'd point at the carrots. And the manager of the shop, first off, he wouldn't let me serve this gentleman, because he said to me I had to watch how he served the gentleman, so that I could serve him without embarrassing him. And his appearance was quite frightening, especially to a child. And, you know, the little kids would point at him and things like that. But I can remember the manager of the shop, Bill, his name was, saying to me, you know, we must, as soon as we see him in the shop, he must be served straight away. Not because he was frightening other people or that they didn't want him in the shop, but that he was embarrassed with himself, and all he really wanted to do was come out, get his shopping, and get back indoors again so he couldn't be seen. And that stayed with me many, many years.